The story reflects an opinion shared by many people around the world, an opinion born not only from data, but from loss, confusion, and unanswered questions left behind by the COVID-19 pandemic. For millions, the pandemic was not only a public health emergency, it was an emotional and psychological rupture. Families were separated, final goodbyes were missed, businesses collapsed, fear became a daily companion, and throughout it all, the public was told to trust without question. At the center of that trust stood authority figures, institutions, and especially Dr. Anthony Fauci, who became one of the most recognizable faces of the pandemic response. To supporters, he represented science and stability. To critics, he became a symbol of something far more troubling, unchecked authority and shifting facts. As the crisis unfolded, official guidance changed repeatedly on mass transmission, lockdowns, natural immunity, and vaccine effectiveness. While evolving science can explain change, what unsettled many people was the certainty with which early claims were presented, followed by quiet reversals months later. These shifts created a sense that the public was not being guided but managed. Critics began asking questions. Were early dissenting medical voices ignored? Were alternative strategies dismissed too quickly? Why did debate disappear from public platforms? When science becomes something that cannot be questioned publicly, trust begins to erode. Dr. Fauci's involvement in pandemic-related research funding and his central role in policy recommendations became focal points of public scrutiny. Congressional hearings, leaked emails, and delayed disclosures fueled skepticism, not because they conclusively proved wrongdoing, but because they revealed how little transparency people felt they were given during a global crisis. And then came the vaccines. They were introduced at historic speed and promoted as the singular path back to normal life. For many, they worked as intended, but for others, the story ended in tragedy. Adverse event reporting systems recorded serious injuries and deaths following vaccination. Yet beyond outcomes, another concern quietly surfaced, one rooted in language and understanding. To many people, the word vaccine carried an assumption, something familiar, time-tested, and well understood. But as details emerged, some began to feel that what they had consented to was not what they believed they were receiving. The new mRNA technology was described as a vaccine, yet to many people, it appeared closer to a genetic or gene-based medical product, one that instructs the body cells to produce a protein rather than introducing a weakened or inactive virus, as with traditional vaccines. For these individuals, the issue was not only safety, it was informed consent. They questioned whether the novelty of the technology, the lack of long-term data, and the remaining uncertainties were communicated clearly enough, especially as mandates and social pressure left little room to decline. To them, calling it a vaccine felt like a neutral medical definition and more like a strategic choice, one that carried legal, social, and psychological weight. And when questions about long-term effects were dismissed instead of discussed openly, skepticism hardened into distrust. While officials emphasized that adverse event reports did not automatically prove causation, families who experienced loss felt dismissed rather than heard. For them, the pain was not only in what happened, but in how quickly their concerns were labeled misinformation. Doctors who spoke cautiously were silenced. Citizens who hesitated were shamed. Jobs were lost. Rights were restricted. What was presented as a choice often felt like coercion. And when trust is forced, it is no longer trust at all. At the same time, pharmaceutical companies reported unprecedented profits, protected from liability, while everyday people absorbed the risk. To many observers, this imbalance raised uncomfortable questions about who truly benefited from this crisis. This is where the word pandemic enters the conversation. For many who used to it, the term does not always mean a single secret conspiracy. Instead, it reflects a belief that the pandemic may have been exploited or strategically managed, that fear was leveraged, power was centralized, and dissent was treated as danger. Does this perspective prove malicious intent? No, but it reveals a deep fracture between institutions and the people they are meant to serve. Dr. Fauci has often been described as the science, but science is not a person. It is a process, one that depends on skepticism, transparency, and open debate. When one voice becomes untouchable and accountability is deflected rather than addressed, public confidence collapses. In the end, this is not just about one man or one virus. It is about a system that demanded obedience instead of understanding, compliance instead of consent. If future public health efforts are to succeed, the lessons must be faced honestly. Trust cannot be commanded. It must be earned through openness, humility, and the courage to confront uncomfortable questions. Because when people feel silenced, ignored, or deceived, whether intentionally or not, the damage lasts far longer than any pandemic. I am Lovely Montoya of Manila STV.